On the second Sunday of May, while other mothers were unwrapping scented candles and Hallmark cards, I stood barefoot in my kitchen scraping burnt egg off the bottom of an old skillet. I wasn't expecting gifts or grand gestures. Just a happy Mother's Day would have been enough. But all I got was silence. Jason walked in late. No flowers. No hugs. His kids ran past me like I was furniture arguing about who got the tablet first. Bree trailed behind him, still on her phone, barely offering a nod. I had warmed the cinnamon rolls Jason loved as a boy, set out his favorite blue mug, even laid the table with cloth napkins like I used to do when he was little. I was trying. Still trying after all these years. He dropped his keys on the counter and said, "You didn't have to cook, Mom. We're grabbing lunch with Bree's parents anyway." That stung more than I let on, but I smiled, nodded. "It's just nice to see you." We sat. They ate quickly. Bree barely touched her plate, picking at it like she was doing me a favor. Then Jason turned to his friend and laughed. "This place. Oh, it's just Mom's, but not for long. We've got plans for the land once it's transferred." I froze. Transferred. He kept going. "Let's be honest. Mom's past the stage where she can really manage all this. She's done her part. Like I was a closed chapter. Like I had disappeared. I didn't cry. I cleared the plates, packed up leftovers, watched them drive away without a backward glance. And I stood there in the doorway thinking not about what I had lost, but about what I had given. Before everything changed, I was just Catherine Ellis' wife to John, mother to Jason, and for the longest time, that was enough. John and I built this place with our own hands. Every fence post, every wooden beam, every squeaky step on the porch. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that made all the difference. John used to say, "If the land holds a love, the rest will follow." It was cheesy, but he meant it. When Jason was born, the land became something deeper than property. It became memory. I rocked Jason on that creaky porch swing through endless colicky nights. I ran beside him between the apple trees as he wobbled on his first bike. I picked ticks out of his hair after long summer hikes, kissed scraped knees, sewed Halloween costumes from old curtains. And when John got sick, first suddenly, then slowly, I didn't flinch. I stayed. I paid taxes, fixed burst pipes, fed the chickens, repaired the tractor when the wheels gave out. I was everything mother, widow, mechanic, accountant. And I did it without asking for help, because I believed one day Jason would come back, not just with his body, but with his heart. I believed he'd remember. He used to leave me notes as a little boy, folded in half and slipped under my pillow. "You're the best mom ever." I kept every single one in a shoebox at the back of my closet. Even after he went to college. Even after he forgot my birthday. Even after he married a woman who called me Kathy, like I was a neighbor instead of family. I kept hoping, because mothers do that. We hold on until we can't anymore. That Sunday morning stayed with me, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. Jason had laughed. A throwaway joke about the farm, about me. She's done her part. As if the sum of my life, my decades of work, love, sacrifice, could be folded into one sentence and filed away like an old receipt. It wasn't anger I felt. It was something colder. A quiet ache that settled into my chest like winter. Because it wasn't the first time. Jason had been slipping away for years. One unanswered call, one missed birthday, one decision made without asking me. It didn't happen all at once. That's the cruel part. It unraveled quietly like thread slipping loose from the hem of a well-worn dress. At first, I made excuses for him. He's busy. The kids are a handful. He'll call tomorrow. But tomorrow kept passing, and I stayed silent. Even when Bree started treating me like I was part of the wallpaper there, but unnoticed, I stayed polite. Even when she called me Kathy instead of Mom, I smiled. Even when the kids stopped hugging me. Even when Jason only came around for tax papers or to borrow tools. I told myself, this is motherhood. You love. You give. You expect nothing back. But that's not quite true, is it? We don't expect payment, but we expect to matter. And on Mother's Day, Jason told me without really saying it that I didn't. A week after that day, he stopped answering my calls. The messages got shorter. Can't talk now. Busy. Later. 2 weeks later, Bree sent a group text, "Hey fam, just brainstorming," thinking we could turn the back acre into a glamping cafe. Rustic chic. Good for Instagram, right? Not once did she ask what I thought. It was still my land. But they were already planning its future without me. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was watering the daisies by the fence when I saw the car. A silver SUV. Bree was in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, scrolling her phone. Jason sat behind the wheel, and with them a stranger. A man in khakis holding a clipboard. They didn't come inside. I watched from the window as the man walked my fields, our fields. He pointed at trees, scribbled notes measured with his eyes. Jason stood beside him, nodding. They didn't knock. They didn't wave. I stood behind the curtain, frozen. That evening after they left, I sat across from Jason in the living room. The kids were in the back shouting over cartoons. Bree was texting, her legs curled under her like she owned the couch. I cleared my throat. "Sweetheart, are you planning something with the land?" Jason didn't even look up. "We're just exploring options, Mom. You know, modernizing, making the most of it." He added with a half smile, "Dad always wanted the land to stay in the family." I nodded, but inside I flinched. What he meant was, you're no longer part of this family as we define it. I had become the old wallpaper in a room being redecorated, present, but irrelevant. It was my youngest granddaughter's birthday. I had spent 2 months sewing a quilt, one square at a time, each piece stitched with memory. A square from Jason's baby blanket, a patch from John's old flannel shirt, a corner from the apron I wore every Christmas morning. It wasn't just a gift. It was a piece of our family story, woven with love and sacrifice. The party was loud, bright, plastic. There were balloons, cupcakes with neon frosting, a bouncy castle in the yard. I walked in holding the quilt like it was made of glass. No one greeted me. The kids were screaming. Bree was taking selfies with her mother. Jason was manning the grill, beer in hand. I smiled. I waited. When the time came to open gifts, I handed the quilt to the birthday girl with both hands. "I made this for you," I whispered. She opened it, blinked, then turned back to her new unicorn playset. It glowed in the dark. Bree smiled thinly. "Oh, it's lovely. We'll find a place for it eventually." Then she added, laughing, "She's really into glow-in-the-dark unicorns right now." I sat with the quilt in my lap for the rest of the party. No one said another word about it. Later that night in the car, I cried not because they didn't like the quilt, but because they didn't see it. They didn't see what it meant. They didn't see me. I hadn't gone looking for anything, really. That day I was just trying to find my old recipe box. The one with Grandma Ellis's rhubarb pie, scribbled in fading ink. I thought baking might distract me from the quiet that had settled over the house like dust. I opened the attic door and climbed up slowly. Same creaky floorboards. Same musty smell. The past pressed in from all sides. Boxes labeled Xmas. John's old fishing rods, a rocking horse Jason once loved. And then I saw it. Tucked behind the old cedar trunk was a small fireproof folder. My heart paused. I reached for it, hands slightly trembling. Sat on the floor where the light from the attic window slanted in. I opened it. Inside insurance policies, birth certificates, and the deed. The land deed. Still in my name, only mine. It hadn't been transferred, hadn't been promised, hadn't been signed over. Jason had never asked, never checked, just assumed, like so many people do when they think someone's too quiet to matter. And suddenly, I could hear John again, not as a ghost, but as a memory. Strong, warm, amused. If you ever feel like you're being faded out, Katie, remember you built this place too. You get to choose how your story ends. I held the folder to my chest like a life preserver, and I whispered out loud, "It's still mine." Not with anger, with clarity. That night I didn't cry. I made tea, folded laundry, watched the sun dip behind the same row of trees John planted the year Jason was born. And I sat in that quiet, not the kind that stings, but the kind that comes before change. I looked around the house. The walls Jason never painted, the porch swing no one sat on, the garden now overgrown. This wasn't a family home anymore. It was a museum of a woman nobody visited. And suddenly, I stopped waiting for them to notice I was still here. I started thinking about what I wanted to do with the part of me that still remained. Because I hadn't vanished, I'd simply been paused, and I was ready to press play. The next morning, I called a real estate agent. Her name was Laura, a woman in her 50s from the neighboring town. "I want this done quietly," I told her. "No signs, no open houses, just clean." She didn't ask questions, just said, "I understand." 3 weeks later, I signed the papers. The farm, 2 acres of sweat, laughter, grief, and resilience, was sold for $212,000 to a retired couple from Colorado. They promised to keep the apple trees. I didn't tell Jason, not out of spite, but out of clarity. If he had truly been paying attention, he would have known it was never his. On the morning I left, the house was still. I walked through each room as if I were saying goodbye to a version of myself. I touched the walls I had painted at midnight when I couldn't sleep after John passed. Ran my fingers along the windowsill where Jason once lined up his toy cars. Opened the cabinet where I used to hide ginger snaps just for him. In my bedroom, the handmade quilt was folded neatly at the foot of the bed. I let my hand rest on it. Then I sat at the kitchen table and wrote Jason a letter. 1 page, no anger, no drama, just truth. You assumed, Jason, and I let you. But this home was never promised to you. It was built by my hands, cared for by my heart, protected by my will. I've decided to let it go before it becomes something I no longer recognize. You won't find me here. I've chosen to stop waiting to be seen. I'm not disappearing. I'm becoming. I folded the letter and left it beneath the old ceramic vase Jason never noticed was cracked. I didn't leave in the night. I left in the morning, quiet, open, honest. I got into my car. The gravel crunched beneath the tires, and I drove. In my new life, everything was smaller, but everything was mine. I closed a joint bank account, opened a new one in my name, sent a quiet donation to a women's shelter 2 counties over. In the memo line, I wrote from a friend who finally walked away. Each morning I brewed my own coffee, sat by the window, watched birds flutter in the lavender. I hung wind chimes that sang in the breeze. And for once, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I didn't post photos, didn't update my address, didn't leave breadcrumbs, because no one chases ghosts. And I was done haunting a house that never looked for me. It took Jason 3 weeks to realize I was gone. He called, twice. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. Everything okay?" Then a text heard something about the farm. "Call me." I let the messages sit, not out of anger, but stillness. On the fourth week, a car pulled into the gravel drive. I was trimming lavender when I saw it. Same Navy truck, same anxious shoulders. Jason stood at the gate, like a boy too big to knock. He didn't say anything at first. Then you really sold it. I nodded. I did. Not cold, just clear. He looked down. I thought it was mine. I replied gently, You never asked. You just assumed. Jason and I sat on the porch step, side by side, not quite mother and child, not quite strangers. The lavender brushed our ankles. John's wind chime spoke a thin, wistful melody over the lake. He rubbed his palms together, the way he used to when he was nervous before school plays. I didn't mean to make you feel forgotten, he said. I know, I answered. But you did. And the thing is, I let you. He nodded, accepting the sentence as if it were a fact of weather. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and took out a sealed envelope, cream-colored, soft at the edges from being held. This explains where the rest of my assets went, I said. You're not cut out, Jason, but you're not the center either. He took it with both hands, finally a gesture of respect. His eyebrows tugged together. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Because you weren't listening, I said. Then I shrugged, and because I needed to listen to myself first. Wind skimmed the porch rail. Somewhere a woodpecker hammered at a trunk. Life kept moving indifferent to human reckonings. Mom, he began, then hesitated. Are you angry? I shook my head. I'm not angry. I'm careful now. There's a difference. He exhaled. I guess I thought the farm would always be there. That's the trouble with assumptions, I replied. They're like weeds, hard to notice until they choke the roots. Silence again, but this time it was not hollow. It was fertile, rich, with possibilities that could grow or remain dormant, depending on how gently we handled them. I stood. Would you like some tea? His face registered surprise, the same boyish astonishment he had when he saw the ocean for the first time. Yes, he said. I would. Inside the cottage, the kettle whistled. I poured 2 mugs mint for him, chamomile for me. We returned to the porch. He sipped, eyes fixed on the mountains. What happens now? He asked. Now, I said, I live. And you live. Maybe we find new ways of meeting in the middle. Maybe we don't. That part is up to both of us. He set the mug down. I'd like to try. I offered a small smile. Trying is a beginning, not a promise. Jason's gaze drifted to the lavender. I see you, Mom. He whispered as if afraid the words might break. I really do. I believed him partly because I wanted to, partly because people can change when the ground beneath them shifts. Dusk gathered. The sky melted from gold to amethyst. He stood lingering. Can I come back? Sometime whenever you choose, I said. But don't come for the land or the past. Come for the tea. He managed an awkward laugh. Deal. He paused at the gate, turning back once. This time the look wasn't one of possession or pity. It was recognition. The truck disappeared down the road, taillights blinking like fireflies. I listened until the gravel sound faded. Then I leaned against the porch post, letting the wind chimes finish their song. I was alone, but not lonely. I had chosen this silence, shaped it, filled it with lavender and wind, and the soft rustle of pages finally turned. If you have ever had to step away from people you love, just to remember who you are, know this stepping away is not abandonment. Sometimes it is the bravest form of staying true to the story you are still writing. And in the hush of Ozark evening, I felt the truth settle like dew. I had not vanished. I had arrived. Sometimes the loudest power is silence. The boldest rebellion is walking away without a word. And the greatest freedom is choosing yourself. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about reclaiming voice space and self-worth when everyone else forgets you exist. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, overlooked by the ones you raised, let this be a reminder: you are not too late. You are not too quiet. You are still here. And you still matter. Because in the end, it's not about who inherits the land. It's about who has the courage to walk it on her own terms.